Shavua Tov, a gute Woche, and welcome to our program. This is the broadcast before the great Yom Tov of Yutes Kislev, and the previous Rebbe writes on Yutes Kislev, it's Chag HaChagim, which means the Yom Tov of Yom Tovim, the great Yom Tov of Yutes Kislev. The Rebbe at the Fabringen once asked a question, that it's known that when the Alter Rebbe was in Fisa, he was visited by two people, by the Baal Shem Tov and by the Mazritcha Magid. And the Rebbe said that they did not come to visit him in Tfisa in the spiritual sense. They came begashmias, neshomes begufim. As a matter of fact, the Rebbe said you have to check whether that room is big enough, that cell where the Alter Rebbe was sitting is big enough for 3 people. So in other words, they did not come beluchnias only, they came also begashmias. To the extent that how did the Alter Rebbe know that this is the Baal Shem Tov? The Alter Rebbe didn't know the Baal Shem Tov, although he was by the Baal Shem Tov when he was 3 years old, but the Alter Rebbe didn't remember how the Baal Shem Tov looked. So how did he know? So the explanation the Rebbe gives that he saw that he came in before the Mazritcha Magid. So he figured if somebody comes in before his Rebbe, before the Mazritcha Magid, it has to be the Baal Shem Tov. So the Baal Shem Tov and the Mazritcha Magid, neshomes begufim, came down to this world to visit the Alter Rebbe when the Alter Rebbe was in jail. And while they visited, the Alter Rebbe asked them, "Favos kumtos mir? Why do I deserve that? Sitting in jail like a criminal? What did I do?" And they answered him, "Because you were disseminating Chassidus in a very, very broad fashion." So the Alter Rebbe asks them a question. Should I stop? Let's bear in mind, this is a question the Alter Rebbe asked. Should I stop? Because there is criticism from the heavens. So they said, no. Since you started, you should continue when you go out and do even more than before. This is the story. The Rebbe generally would tell a story, and then he would say, Atkan is the Teichen HaSipur, until now is the end of the story, the contents of the story, and then the Rebbe would explain the story. So the Rebbe asked a question, what happened here? The Magi, the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe and the Magi told the Alter Rebbe that the reason that he's sitting in jail because there's criticism, not criticism that comes from a certain area, from a certain town, or from a certain group. Criticism that comes from the heavens, that he is spreading Yiddishkeit, Chassidus, in a very, very broad fashion. So if that's the case, asks the Alter Rebbe, maybe I should stop. So what's the answer? The answer is, since you started, then you should continue. If this is what brought about heavenly criticism, then maybe we should stop. And that was the question of the Alter Rebbe. So what's the answer? That if you started, if it's something that brings criticism, maybe the answer is there shouldn't be criticism, you should stop. The Alter Rebbe asks this question. Moreover, the Rebbe asks, what has changed? The Alter Rebbe was in Fisa for 53 days. What has changed between the first day and the 53rd day? That's one thing we have to understand. Also, it's brought down. I believe the first time it was printed was in Beis Rebbe, that the Alter Rebbe wrote a letter on the day of his liberation. I think it's brought down from the, it's in Ayem Yom, and he sent it to 2 people, to the Belev Yitzchak of Balditchev, maybe also to the Menachem Chernobyl, and to the Baruch Meshebuzher. The obvious question is, to the believer Yitzchak of Balditchev, he sent a letter. Yotzosi b'sholim, mi Hashem sholim, that Baruch Hashem, I'm free. Why? Because he sent a pidyon to the believer Yitzchak of Balditchev, like the famous story. They didn't know exactly the name of the Alter Rebbe, and then he opened up a chumash, and it says, Shever, Mitzrayim, Shever is a Rashatevish Neil ben Rivke. So the Alter Rebbe sent a pidyon to the and shluchim to the believer Yitzchak of Balditchev. They were friends. The question is, why did the Alter Rebbe send a letter to the Baruch of Mezhebush? The Baruch of Mezhebush and the Alter Rebbe had differences of opinion. And why, of all Talmidim, the Alter Rebbe would send it to the Baruch of Mezhebush? That's another question for us to answer. We're getting to the story. The third question maybe is that there's a story that the Baruch Mezhebush met the Alter Rebbe. And they were discussing how the conduct, how the anhoga of Chassidim has to be vis-a-vis Chassidus. Do we do it in a broad way, in a broad fashion, or do we do it in a smaller way? Do we do it little by little? The Baruch was of the opinion, Kved Elokim Hastil Dover, that you have to hide it. You can give a little bit of Chassidus, a little bit of Seder Satayla, not to everyone, because not everyone is a vessel for it. Only to select individuals in a little shtibel among a few Talmidim. That Alter Rebbe felt that we should give that they should be disseminated in a broad fashion. So the Baruch of Mezhebush says to the Alter Rebbe, Ich bin ein Einikel von Baal Shem. We're talking about the Teres Achsidus of the Baal Shem Tov. So I am a grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. It should be the way I want. And the Alter Rebbe answers him, Is that ein Einikel begashmius? Ich bin ein Einikel beruchnius. You're a grandson in Gashmius, because your mother was the daughter of the Baal Shem Tov, the Rebbetzin Odel. As they would say in Poland, Bruder Benudel. And I am a grandson of the Baal Shem Tov because my teacher is the Masditcher Magid, and he was a Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov, so I'm my grandson. Now, if you take this dialogue and you analyze it, what's happening here? Two people, two grown men, tzaddikim, and they are arguing who is a bigger miyuchas. It sounds like two kids from Molitele on the night after the Verbringen of the Tzetzoyim. And every kid says, I'm a bigger miyuchas, and the other kid says, I'm a bigger miyuchas. My father, my mother, my grandmother, blah, blah, blah. Two grown men tzaddikim arguing who is a bigger miyuchas. How do you reconcile that? The Alter Rebbe writes, Yotzosi b'sholim me Hashem sholim. What does that mean? I want you to know. I once asked one of the great Hasidim. He said, what does it mean, Yotzosi b'sholim me Hashem sholim? Yes, we say it, it says. And he kind of did not answer. We will return to all of these questions. But first, our customary story. The quiz this year of Tes Kislev and Yud Kislev was that Tes Kislev was Shabbos, Yud Kislev was Sunday. In the year Tafshin Yud Beis, it was the same quiz. Tes Kislev was Shabbos, Yud Kislev was Sunday. Mitzori Shabbos, the Rebbe went out for Kiddush Lavona. There was no Lavona. And as the Chassidim explained, there was a Lavona, but it was covered. We didn't see it. It was cloud. So the Rebbe said that the Rebbe Nishma once went out for Kiddush Lavona, and it was a clouded night, and you couldn't see the Lavona. So the Rebbe Nishma told the story of the Meir P'li Mishleaner, that the Meir P'li Mishleaner once went out, and he was looking for the Lavona, and there was no Lavona because it was clouded. So the Meir P'li Mishleaner said, by Moshe Rabbeinu, when we were in Midbar with the Anani Yakoved, the Ananim were the clouds from all sides. How did we do Kiddush Lavona? Because it was closed from all sides. so you couldn't see the moon. So the Rebbe Mishnah said that Moshe Rabbeinu took out a handkerchief, and he waved the handkerchief, and when he waved the handkerchief, the clouds parted, and he was able to see the Levona. As the Rebbe Nishma told the story, he took out a handkerchief and he showed what the Rebbe Mishnah did, and all of a sudden the clouds parted and there was a Levona. And then the Rebbe says, if there's somebody here that can do this, then we can be Mechadish the Levona. So one of the Chassidim who was standing there says, the Rebbe. So the Rebbe answered, it says, Genug as ich hab erzählt die Meise. It's enough that I told the story. And then the Rebbe says, I'm going to leave for a while. The Rebbe went to his mother, and I'm going to come back soon. The Rebbe went to his mother, stayed by his mother for a while, and then when the Rebbe came back, the clouds parted, and there was a Levona. And that happened, Tovshin Yud Beis, and the time it happened was like the Kviyas of this year. Tes Kislev was Shabbos, Yud Kislev was Sunday. This was the Mitzvah Shabbos Kiddush between Tes Kislev and Yud Kislev. In order to answer some of these questions that we mentioned before, number one, what has changed between the first day and the 53rd day? That Alter Rebbe was in Fisa because he was disseminating Chassidus in a great way. And that Alter Rebbe was determined to do that. And it's the Mesiras Nefesh of the Alter Rebbe. What changed from the first day to the 53rd day was the Mesiras Nefesh of the Alter Rebbe, the steadfast Mesiras Nefesh that he is not giving up, and he wants to spread the Teila Yafutzu Ma'inasecha Chutzu. And that broke through all the barriers, and it broke through the heavenly criticism. Now, the Baruch, as mentioned, was of the opinion, Kved Elikim Hastil Dover. So the Alter Rebbe said to him, yes, you have a point. If this would be, you say you're an anical of the Baal Shem Tov. Here we're not talking about the Gashmias of the Baal Shem Tov. Who has the shul, who has the community, who has the belongings. We're talking about the Ruchnias of the Baal Shem Tov. The Ruchnias of the Baal Shem Tov, I'm an anical. So it has to go the way I want, that there should be no limits on disseminating the Torah of the Alter Rebbe. Now, the Alter Rebbe writes, Yotzosi b'sholim me'ashem sholim. What's the depth of that? What does Yotzosi b'sholim me'ashem sholim mean? I was in Fisa, the Alter Rebbe says. And Baruch Hashem, after that, Polo b'sholim nafshi, when I said Tilim, I went out. What was the difference that before I was incarcerated? And then there was Me'ashem. So the Alter Rebbe answers, Yotzosi b'sholim. Why did I go out? Me'ashem sholim, because there was peace with God. The criticism that God had, that the Eibishter had, the heavenly criticism, was removed. Therefore, Yotzosi b'sholim, I went out b'sholim. Why Me'ashem sholim? Because now there's no more criticism. Why did Alter Rebbe send this letter to the Baruch of Mezhebush? The Baruch of Mezhebush was one of those who had a certain kpede on the Alter Rebbe for that reason. The Alter Rebbe is disseminating Chassidus in a very broad fashion. Now the Alter Rebbe wants to deliver a message to the Baruch that the kpede in the heavens is off. They tell a story, I heard it from many Chassidim, I heard it from the Menachem Zeva Levi Gringlas, that the Breslover, who was a Plimenik, who was a nephew of the Baruch, said in his characteristic Ukrainian expression, Yiddish Ukrainian, he said, Mit Peterburg is durchgekommen. With Peterburg he worked out. Aber mit dem Vater Burech is nicht durchgekommen. With my uncle, the Burech, with him he didn't straighten out yet. Here the Alter Rebbe is sending a message of all people to whom? To the Baruch Mezhebush, to the Vater Burech. And what's the message? Yotzosi b'sholim. Do you know why I went out b'sholim? May Hashem sholim, because there is peace now in heaven. And if there's peace in heaven, there should be peace on this earth. That was the message, especially to the Baal of Mezhe. And what made the difference? The Mesilas Nefesh of the Alter Rebbe. And the Rebbe explains to us so many times, in our generation, we don't need Mesilas Nefesh to learn Chassidus. No one is going to put us in jail for learning Tanya. So now we can learn Tanya, and we can learn Likutei Torah, and we can learn all the Maimadim, all the Rebbes. We can learn Likutei Sichos. Ki Yad Hashem Hatevu Aleinu as much as we can. Especially as we are the last generation of Golus and the first generation of Geulah. And we're going to go out of Golus, Lichshiyofutsu Ma'inesecha Chutza. When your wellsprings, the wellspring of Baal Shem, will spread outwardly. And Baruch Hashem, through the Rebbe's work, the Rebbe's Shluchim, the Rebbe's Talmidim, the Rebbe's Chassidim, the word of the Baal Shem Tov is all over the world. But it seems there's still a little bit left. Pachim Ktanim, small vessel that we still have. This was given over to us, this last generation of Golus, the first generation of Geulah, to put the finishing touches on the Golus and go out gesundheit und Freilichkeit. To the Geulah ha'amitis ve'ashlemo, v'agolo didano, v'simcho v'tuv levov, v'teva nire ve'aniglo, l'mata me'asar l'tfochim, v'chesed, u'verachamim, v'teikef, u'miyad, mamesh.